Like me, you've probably been watching the news recently. You can't really get away from it nowadays. It's like the forces of evil are converging and gaining power. I think we're heading into some dark times. I mean, it's just my opinion, I guess. I'm just uniting a bunch of different traits into the forces of evil. We can imagine the forces of evil being subdivided into indifference, apathy, intolerance, pettiness, fear, suspicion, greed is another one. And of course, reckless hatred. Hatred. These are the forces of evil, in my opinion. If ever I were to ascribe something as evil, they're the root of it. They're the core motivators. And I think every person carries a little capacity for evil. I can feel it in myself. I have the capacity for evil, to be a hateful person. It takes root, and if it's given the right circumstances, it can grow into like an uncontrollable cancer in the mind. And everyone carries the seed of evil with them, the seed of hate, intolerance. It can be brought on by fear, by frustration at one's circumstances. And then it can manifest into all kinds of really ugly things. And this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing certain powerful people become adversaries. They become turned against their fellow men and women. And it's my opinion that if we are to survive into the next century, we have to work to beat it back. We have to beat back the evil, guys. The evil is within us. We have to beat it back. It has to start on an individual level. We must beat back the pettiness, the reckless hatred, the disregard for certain others that we deem as lesser, this sense of hierarchy where conveniently we place ourselves on top and we see others as beneath us. This is all part of that, this kind of force of nature of evil. It's not something that you can hold in your hand that's physical. It's an intangible force of nature. Perhaps it's a pattern, perhaps it's a code of information, perhaps it's a corruption, a form of corruption within the character of human beings. We got to try and beat it back. The further we beat it back, the better our chances are of surviving into the next century. The more secure our children will be, and our children's children, and their children's children, by beating back the evil and the hatred and the intolerance. We're securing the future of our next generations. I think most people, most parents especially, want a better future for their children. It's very rare that you'd find someone who didn't want that. Even someone who doesn't have kids want the future generations to be better than the previous generations. We can make decisions now that are going to affect future generations. If in our time we're able to beat back the hatred and replace it with respect, compassion, with justice, with leveling hierarchies, reminding everyone of our commonalities, discouraging hierarchical thinking. Our choices today, with what we choose to do and how we choose to behave and what causes we choose to fight for, it will affect them. And from what I can see, the furthest we can beat back the forces of evil that I can understand is veganism. That's the furthest back we can beat it. Veganism is anti-hierarchy. It's a form of behaving where I wouldn't treat a snail any worse than I would treat myself. I'm not saying that I'm going to do things for that snail. I'm saying that I wouldn't mistreat a snail worse than I would want to be treated if I was trapped in a snail's body, right? Snail just as an example, but really the major ones that we talk about a lot are farm animals, just because of the scale at which we disrespect them and pervert their nature. Let's use those as an example. I wouldn't treat a chicken any worse than I would want to be treated as a chicken. What I would want, if I was trapped in a chicken's body, what I would want is to be left alone by humans, first and foremost. Before being helped by humans at all, I would first want to be left off of their dinner plates, and I want to be left out of their cages, and I wouldn't want to be forced to lay eggs for them, okay? And that's the kind of non-hierarchical thinking that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that we need to put anyone on a pedestal. I'm saying, first of all, we need to take them out from beneath our feet, from under our boot. We're standing on them. We're standing on innocent animals. For our convenience and our tradition and our taste preferences and very arbitrary reasons. I'm not suggesting that a chicken has more to contribute to society than any human. That's not necessary. I'm just talking in the way that I approach the chicken. The way that I would treat the chicken is the same way that I would want to be treated. Now, I take it a little bit further. I want to love the animals of this earth. But that's not necessary. It's not necessary to love anyone for this. It's just declining to mistreat them. It's declining to abuse them, to exploit them for our gain. It's declining that. So it's a non-action, what I'm suggesting. That's the first step. And then we can love them. But we'd get ahead of ourselves if we said we have to love animals. Ideally, yeah, but let's take it one step at a time. First, let's stop abusing them and choosing not to live a life of hate. I think indifference is hateful. I think apathy towards a dire circumstance that we put animals in, to not care, is quite evil. Veganism does aspire to be a movement of love. It's certainly a movement of peace. And it aspires to be a movement of love. Ideally we would, but we're so far away from that right now. The status quo is so far away from being a movement of love towards animals, or towards anyone, towards people and animals, towards all beings. It's so far away from being a force of love that it would seem so extreme if vegans were to propose loving animals. That would feel so extreme. So vegans don't. Vegans, instead, we make a very modest proposal, which is still seen as extreme. The modest proposal is to stop abusing animals. Stop abusing them, stop exploiting them. I think if we're to be a society of justice, with justice as the underpinning foundation, a society built upon justice, that justice has to apply to everyone. No one can be left out of that. No one can be left out of justice. And when we choose to leave certain individuals out from that underpinning of justice in our society, we in turn undermine the entire notion of justice. We show that there are exceptions to justice when it's convenient for us, when it suits us. And that's what we see a lot of the time. We see this foundational principle that keeps society at bay, that keeps society peaceful and prosperous and moving in a positive direction. We see that constantly undermined. People are undermining it all the time with their purchasing decisions when they choose to participate in a system which exploits and abuses animals. That is undermining the entire underpinning of justice as a whole. So it starts by respecting that society as we know it, the one thing that is necessary for that continuation, for the survival of everything we know and love, the thing that's necessary is justice. We mustn't let it be eroded. We have to fight for it. We have to fight to keep that foundation. And this takes work. It takes commitment. It's easy to be a nihilist. It's easy to be self-serving. I could do that if I wanted to. I could be a self-serving prick who has no concerns but for his own. I could do that. But I'm capable of so much more than that, and so are you. You're capable of so much more. But this is about survival. Anything you love and hold dear hangs in the balance here. It's at stake when we talk about this. It could be under threat by the forces of evil. greed, avarice, enough not being enough. We've got to start fighting it. We've got to defend the thing that has been protecting humans from the darker forces of human nature. I know this is a little bit of an abstract talk, but think about in your own life how this can apply. How can you uphold the protective coating on society? How can you fight evil in your life, in big ways and in small ways? We've all got to do our part. Me making this video is part of me trying. I'm at least trying. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I'm at least trying. And let's all try. Let's all try. I'll leave the video there, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
I like Spain because I'm old-fashioned, and it's an old-fashioned country.
Are you, in fact, also still interested? I know it was a passion of yours in previous years in bullfighting.
Yes, but I'm less. I'm interested in what I remember.
You don't?
I don't like it much anymore.
Why is that?
Well, I've turned against it for very much the same reason that my father, who was a great hunter, suddenly stopped hunting. He said, "I've killed enough animals, and I'm ashamed of myself." And I was a bad torerito, you know, for a while myself, and I've seen too many hundreds of bullfights, thousands of them, I suppose, and wasted a lot of my life now that I look back on it. And although it's been a great education to me in human terms and in many other ways, I begin to think that I've seen enough of those animals die.